Minecraft, Team Fortress, Kingdom Hearts. All of them have a different way to display players' health. Today we learn how to create our own health bars in the Godot engine. In an empty project, create a control node, name it Health UI, and in our level we will add a canvas layer and add the Health UI inside of it. That way, even if we move the camera, it will follow the player. Of course, we could also add it above the player's head, instead of using a canvas layer. So, we will use progress bars. Set the size to 300 by 40. OK. Select the value. Now we're gonna hide the percentage because we don't care about it. And down on the overrides, styles, select the style box empty for the background and style box flat for the fill. Now, we have begin to end. Our health increases from the left to the right. You have end to begin and top to bottom, bottom to top. This one makes more sense if you have something like this. So, let's add another progress bar. We'll name the first one bar 1, the second bar 1 damage. That will be a damage indicator. Set it to full rect. Hide the percentage. In the styles, we'll pick a black background. And in the fill, we pick a white. Now we'll use the ordering and set the Z index to -1. That will hide it behind its parent. OK. Now add the script. Actually, wait. You also need a label. And use center left. Sorry, the label should be inside bar 1. Now center left. And font size is 32. That will just show how much health we have. So, let's say we have our max health over here. This could also be a const if we want, unless you have some upgrades in your game that increase the maximum health. Var health int is equal to max health. And we'll use a set function. We'll make sure that our health will always be between 0 and maximum health. So clamp I means that we're dealing with integers. Val 0 max health. And we also want to know if we're healing or not. So we'll use a boolean. If val is greater than health, then we are healing. Else we're taking damage. And we want to update our bar. create a function here, update var1, takes a boolean, returns void. Okay, now let's write the ready function. We need to drag these three in our script. var1 dot max value is equal to max health. var1 dot value is equal to max health. Same with var1 damage. And set a label. Okay, that's it. Now, in our process function, we'll make sure that we can change our health. If input is action just pressed, we'll use the UI accept. We can go in the project settings, in the input map. This is the enter key, keep at enter and spacebar. Heal by 10. If input is action just pressed, cancel, which is the escape button, take damage 10. Write those functions. Increase the health by the amount. And decrease the health. Now in the update bar, first of all, let's set a label. That's easy. str health. Let's set var1. Its value will now be the health. And let's also change its color. We want a green color when we have full health, and a red color when we're at low health. So, var stylebox, var1 dot get stylebox, get theme stylebox, pick the fill, and now we change the color. PG color. Hold on. PG color, yeah. And that will be color. Let's also pass a ratio of the health. Float health divided by max health. Now, since this is integer division, we'll turn one of those into a float. Otherwise, we'll lose the decimal part, and it will return 0. So, pass the ratio in here. I'll also set another variable, actually a const, max color value, set it to 0.8, and we'll say 1 minus ratio for the red color, ratio for the green, and 0 for the blue. And we are going to clamp this. Our minimum value will be the zeros, so color dot black, and our max value will be color, max color value, max color value, and 0. We don't care about the blue color. Now, because we're going to use this a lot, I'll place it in a different method. Func set color, or rather get color, give a ratio, which is a float, and return this. So now we can say get color and pass the ratio. Okay. Now for the damage indicator. We have bar 1 damage. This one will update slower, and it will only happen when we take damage. So, if we are healing, then bar 1 dot value is equal to health. Else, we'll use a twin. So var twin is get tree dot create twin dot property. Over here we need the object bar 1 damage. Hold on, this is damage, my bad. Value, health, and duration is 1. So this will take 1 second to gradually update the bar 1 damage to our current health. Okay, let's see how this goes. As you can see, when we have full health it's green, as it decreases it becomes yellow and then red. As for the damage indicator, it just follows our health bar. However, there is one problem. As you can see, we didn't have a damage indicator, and that was because the twin was already running. If we are healing and our health is greater than bar 1 damage dot value and twin is not null and twin is valid, twin dot kill, and then we set the value. Let's see. Yep, it works. Let's go over here. And also say health is equal to max health. So we don't need a label here anymore. We are setting health, and that will call the update bar 1. So we also get the green color without pressing any buttons. Okay. Now this kind of bars can also be used with stamina, mana, or shields. Let's create a shield example. Shield bar. Now I could place it above the health, but I'll try something different. First of all, set the size 340. Remove the percentage and trim overrides, empty background, and pick a blue color. Now what I want is for the shield to always follow our health. So if we are at full health, it will be over here. If we take damage, it will be right after the green part. So in order to do that, we go to our script, we create 2 more variables. Now this will be similar to before. Lamp I, the value 0 max shield, and update shield bar. Add the bar and set its value. Now on the ready function, we'll change the position. We want the silver to be right after our health. So silver.position.x is going to be bar1.position.x plus bar1.value divided by max health times bar1 size x, and that will place us right at the end of it. We also need to set the y position, That's easy. They have the same Y. Shield bar. Now we have to change our damage function. If shield, that is the same as saying if shield is not 0, var remain is equal to amount minus shield. That is how much damage we will take after the shield breaks. So, shield is reduced by amount, and amount is equal to remain. If amount is greater than 0, that means our shield was not enough to protect us, so our health will also go down. Okay. Let's also add another function, gain shield. Let's pick the tab button. This is the tab. Gain shield 10. Okay, now in the update bar function, whenever it moves, we also have to move our shield. So we need this command over here. Now we have our shield. And now our shield shows up in front of our health. If we take damage, first we break the shield and then we lose health. Okay, now let's move on to texture bars. Texture progress bar. Name it bar 2. This one works a bit different. We have textures. This is the under texture. This is gonna be the over that shows up above the under and the progress. And this is our progress. So, drag the under PNG, the over, and progress. Where is it? Progress white. Let's set a value. Here we can also change the tint of the textures. For example, I want the over to be fully black. We can also change the fill mode. Just like before, we have left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top, and some other options. Let's see bilinear. This starts from the middle and goes to both sides. And it works for top and bottom as well. We'll just use the left to right here. The 9 patch stretch allows us to resize the progress bar. And let's go to the script. One more method. Update bar2. Void. Now we also need to add the bar. And we say bar2.value is equal to health. And we can also change the color. Now we don't have a style box anymore. We are going to use the tint. Tint progress. And get color ratio. Call this. And let's see. Now as you can see, it works pretty similar. Set the shield bar value to 0. And let's move on. This one will look similar to before, but we're going to use segments for the health. So it will look like this. So now we'll see another progress bar. Pick texture progress bar again. And we'll also add damage indicator, just like before. Now, over here we only need the over and the progress. Progress color. Now if we increase the value, we can see that it goes based on segments. You can also change the tint. As for the damage bar, just use the progress. Progress white. Down in the ordering, change the Z index to -1. And we add the timer. Set the time to 0.5. Okay, we'll use a variable for how many times the damage indicator is going to flash. And we'll keep track of the flashing. So create an update function. Now for the bar 3, we change the value instantly. As for bar 3 damage, it's going to be either health if we are healing, else let's create a constant step. It's going to be 10 because I've split the health in 10 boxes. Health plus step. Dot value. If we are not healing, set the flash count to 0 and start the timer. We also need to add the timer. And now we connect its signal. We are going to increase the flash count by 1 and use mod max flash, which is 7. Then we are going to change bar 3 damage dot visible to flash count mod 2. This is a boolean, so when this becomes 0, it will be false. When it becomes 1, it becomes true. And finally, if flash count is less than max flash, timer.start. Okay, one last thing. We need to hide our damage indicator. And if we run it now, nothing will happen because I forgot to add the update function. Okay, now we run it. As you can see, it flashes. Let me change the max shield over here so that we start with no shields. Now, except for this, we can also use a circular bar. Name this bar 4. Select clockwise. Now we also have a radial fill. We'll see that one later. Now for the textures, we'll just use a circle. This is the under. This is the progress. And this is the over. We place the under here. Progress. And over. Now if we increase the value, it goes in a circular motion. We can also set counterclockwise so that it starts on the other way around. And we also have both. Now for the radial fill, the initial angle is where we start. So this is where the 0 value is. And our fill degree shows where the max value is. So in our script, add it in the script. Set its value to health. And again, we'll change the tint. We're gonna need the ratio. There it is. And update par 4 ratio. Okay. Now let's create a Kingdom Hearts health bar. We're gonna need 4 progress bars. So this is bar 5. Add another one as a child. Bar 5 damage. Duplicate. And rename this one to bar 6 damage. So in this case, we have two parts, a circular one and a horizontal one. So bar 5 will be the circular. We'll take over and progress. We do not set an under because we have this one, the bar 5 damage. And we'll set it to clockwise. Now there is one problem. If we start changing the value, we start from up here instead of over here. So we change the initial angle. Now after some testing I found that the value is 250. And we also have to change the fill degrees for the max value. 286. Let's see. Yeah, 285. 285. Now for bar 5 damage, we'll use the under. And the progress. But not the over. And we set the ordering to -1. Now for bar 6, this is gonna be the horizontal one. So again we take the over and the progress. Drag it here. Okay. By the way, this should be 286. So there is a problem here. So it's 286. And we also have to copy these values on our bar 5 damage. Clockwise, fill the grease, paste the value, and paste here. Now both bar 5 and bar 5 damage have the same fill mode and the same angles. Now back to bar 6. We have to change left to right to left, so that the value will start filling from over here. And bar 6 damage will pick the under and the progress. And we change the ordering to -1. Now in our script, drag them here. Okay, so we set the bar 5 value, health, and bar 6 dot value is also going to be health. If we do that, first of all, let's call the method. And as you can see, there is a problem. Both of them are decreasing at the same time. Now to fix that, we'll go in the ready function. Set the max value for bar 5 as max health divided by 2. And bar 5 damage dot max value is going to be the same. I'm taking the max value from bar 5 so that we don't do the division again. Now for bar 6, we'll take the minimum value and set it to max health divided by 2, which is the max value of bar 5. And for bar 6 damage, the same thing. And also set the max values to max health. Now if we run it, it works as we'd expect. Now, let's add the damage indicators. We'll use another twin. If we are healing, bar 5 damage dot value is equal to health. Now for the next 10 minutes I was trying to fix the damage indicators. Eventually I left this for later, so we will hide them for now and move on to the texture rects. We'll see how to fix the damage indicators at the end of the video. So to avoid any confusion, just use bar 5.value equals health, bar 6.value equals health, bar 5.tint progress equals get color ratio, and bar 6 tint progress get color ratio. Also we need the if healing for the texture rects. Since we're doing a Kingdom Hearts health bar, we might as well add the character. Pick texture rect. And set Godot. This is just a PNG of the Godot mascot. Fit width. Keep aspect. Okay, looks good. Now we duplicate. We add this image, which is like it's taking damage, and set modulate to a red color. Now we hide it. We add another timer, 0.5 seconds. And on our script. Now inside the else, which means that we're taking damage, we'll say texture rect2.show texture rect.hide and timer2.start. Now we're gonna connect the timeout signal. Which will do the opposite of this. It will show the texture rect and hide the texture rect2, which is the damaged one. So let's see. If we press escape, takes damage. Over here we also need to say equals, because we saw the Kodo mascot was taking damage at the start. Now it doesn't. Okay, and that's one way to do this. Another way would be to use a dictionary of textures. Dictionary, string, texture. So we'll start with the happy, which is going to be preload the normal PNG. Sad, preload Kodo sad. Dead, preload Kodo dead. And damaged, Kodo damage. Okay. So down here, if we are healing, we take the key, dead, if our health is 0, else, sad, if our health is less than 30, else, happy. And we say texture rect dot texture is equal to textures key. And also texture rect dot modulate. We want this to be white, because we're going to be setting it to red when we take damage. Okay, in the else, this is where we take damage. Texture rect dot texture is equal to textures damaged. And we set the modulate to red. So we don't need this anymore. Control K. And we say timer 2.start. Now down the timeout. Control K. We get the key. And we set the texture we had before. So if we run this, I press escape, we take damage, and then it remains happy. Now we went below 30 health, and you see the mascot is sad. We go to the end, and it's dead. If we increase the health, it changes again. So that's the alternative. Instead of having many texture X over here and showing and hiding each one of them, you can have a dictionary of textures. Finally, we'll see one last health bar. This is a bit different from the rest. We are going to use a texture rect. And we'll use the heart. Let's place it down here. So we set it to ignore size, so that I can set it to 0. And we set the stretch mode to tile. That way we can just change the size and we get more hearts. So we'll call this one empty hearts. Set its modulate to black. Ctrl D. Set the modulate to red. We need another variable. We'll call this one heart amount. And let's say we want 5 hearts. So that will be our max health divided by 20. Now that will be 5 hearts. We could also divide it by our step times 2. If we say that half a heart is 10 HP, 20 HP would be 1 heart. So let's set it over here. We also need the width. Now the width of this image was 76. You want to pick a number that can be divided by 2, so that you can use half a heart as well. Now in the ready, call this full hearts. Drag them in the script. And I will say empty hearts dot size dot x is equal to heart amount times width. And the same goes for the full hearts. They have the same size, so I can just use empty hearts dot size. Now func update cards. We'll only change the full hearts, so change the size, width times our current health divided by 2 times step. Step is 10, so this will be 20. This is just like before with the heart amount, but instead of max health, now we use the current health. We have to go back to our set function on the health and update the hearts. Okay. Now what if we want extra hearts? Something similar to the shield we had before. Control D the full hearts. Name this shield hearts. Change the modulate to blue. Throw it in the script. We'll set the position of the shield hearts to be after the empty hearts. Take the position of the empty hearts and add the size of the empty hearts on the x-axis always. Now also set shield equals to 0. That way the size of the shield hearts will also become 0. Now over here, shield hearts dot size dot x is equal to width times shield divided by 2 times step. It's very similar to the above. In our set shield function, we also update the hearts. Okay, now it's complete. Okay, now enable the damage indicators. And in the script, first of all, a few changes. I set the max value of bar 5 to 60. We used to have it at max health divided by 2, which was 50. Now, if we are healing, first we check bar 6. If bar 6 dot value is greater than the damage indicator, we don't need to show our damage anymore. Our health is greater than both damage indicators. So we stop the twin. This is a twin we have created at the top, twin 2. So we stop our twin and set the values of the damage indicators to the health. Else, if our bar 5 dot value is greater than the damage indicator of bar 5, again stop the twin and create a new one. But this time we're only gonna use bar 6 damage, value, health, duration 1. And we set the other damage indicator to health. This is it for healing. If we are taking damage, it's this one over here. We stop the twin. And now we want to see how much time we'll spend on the horizontal damage indicator. And then subtract that value from 1 to see how much time we'll spend on the circular damage indicator. So what I did is, we pick the difference between the damage indicator and bar 6 and divide that by the value of the damage indicator minus health. So this will be the percentage of the damage that we took on the horizontal bar. And we'll use that percentage as our time. So to explain why this works, let's say that our health is over here and we decrease it by this amount. Let's say over here is 90 and over here is 70. We take 90, which is where our bar damage indicator is, minus where our bar 6 is, which is 70, divided by 90 again, minus our health, which is 70. And that will give us 1. That means that all the damage we take is in the horizontal bar. Now, let's say that the damage that we take is in between, so somewhere over here. This is 50. Our bar 6 now is at its minimum value, which is 60. It's right here. And our health is at 50. Which will give us 30 divided by 40. Which means that 3/4 of the damage will be on the horizontal bar and 1/4 will be on the circular. So 3/4 of our time will be spent reducing the horizontal damage indicator and 1/4 will be used to reduce the circular. And finally, let's say that our damage starts over here. Let's say we have 50 health now. And we reduce it by 10. So we're at 40. Now the time that we spend on the horizontal bar should be 0. Let's see. So we have bar 6 damage indicator, which should be at 60, its minimum value, minus 60, which is the minimum value of bar 6, divided by 60 minus the health. And that will always be 0. Now, no matter what, the numerator will be a non-negative number. And the same goes for the denominator. So what happens if we have something like this? 70 minus 70. That will be a division by 0. Since our health is 70, that means that the value of bar 6 will also be 70. And this is the value of the damage indicator, which also goes up here. So this is also 70. That will give us 0 divided by 0, which is not a number. So we have to check down here. If it is none, then set both times to 0. And then we just use the twin property. First on bar 6 damage, value, health, the time for bar 6 damage. Then twin property, bar 5 damage, value, health, and bar 5 time, which is just 1 minus bar 6 time. And it works just fine. Except for the fact that it pauses over here for a split second. but it mostly works. Okay, a few changes on the code. First of all, on the 2D scene, our shield bar now has position Y0, so we don't have to set it in the script. And our timers have the one-shot enabled. That way they don't start again after the timeout. Now on the script, I have added comments and I've changed a few things. Don't worry, I'll also upload it on GitHub. We have the constants over here. Max color value remains the same. I have added twin duration. Before we just had 1 second on our twins. Now we can set it over here. I changed the max flash to a constant and the textures. I have added the SAD health threshold, which is 30. That means that if our health is less than 30, our texture will be SAD. And we are using it down here on the key. SAD if health is less than SAD health. And also on the bar 5-6 function, if we are healing, we also set SAD if health is less than SAD health. Now the Kingdom Hearts circular bar max, which is 60, that is just the maximum health in our ready function for bar 5. Before we used to have 60 as a number here. I just replaced it with a constant. I renamed width to heart width so that we know that we're talking about the hearts. Now I've also added some regions for each bar. This is bar 1, our shield bar and bar 2. Now on the health segments, I made a few changes on the step. Instead of using a const, we are now using segment step, which we are setting on the ready function. And it's going to be 10% of our maximum health. Now on the hearts, I changed heart amount to max heart amount. We can also set it to a constant if our maximum health cannot be upgraded. And the heart step. This one we can multiply by our health to get the correct width of the full hearts. Now we have max health and health, max shield and shield. I've also made a change with the hearts function. I have split it into 2 different ones. Let me change this over here. The update shield hearts is just changing the shield hearts. Now in the ready function, we don't have to change the values of bar 1 and bar 1 damage anymore. And that is because they will change when we set the health. On the shield, we are setting the max value, and position to Y is no longer necessary because we set the position over here. Now we set a max value for bar 2 and bar 3. And the segment step will be our max health times 0.1. We cast this to an int so that we don't get a warning. We also set a max value for bar 4. Now on bar 5, we change 60 to a constant. The rest remain the same. Now the only thing that is new here is these two commands. Our hard step will be our width divided by our max health. Let me change this to a float so that we don't get a warning about integer division. And we multiply this by the amount of hearts we want. So our empty hearts will be max health times hard step. If I run this, we get 5 hearts. Now this is kind of similar to what we had before, which was with a width divided by 20, which was our max health 100 divided by 5. If we change this, it can be divided by 100 times 5, which is the same as this one. The process is the same, heal is the same, take damage is the same, gain seed, get color. Okay, in update bar 1, we don't really need the twin is valid. We can just say end twin, because once the twin ends, it becomes null. And to also fix the damage indicator, we have to kill the twin when we take damage and create a new one. Now over here we have bar1.value divided by max health. You can just use the ratio because we already have this value. Now on update bar 3, we have these two, if not healing. So I've changed it to if healing, else. So it's the same thing. Now if we are healing, we stop the timer. That means that our damage indicator will not be flashing anymore. And also, let's set visible to false. And that's because if we are healing, our bar 3 damage will be hidden behind bar 3. They're both health. So there's no point in showing it. Now if you want, you can add this one inside the if, and in the else, we'll use the health plus segment step, so we don't need the ternary operator anymore. Now bar 5, 6, the twin 2 is valid is not necessary, again. We change the tune duration. Hold on. My bad, I also have to change the tune duration on bar 1. On update bar 1, we set the tune duration. Now on bar 5 and 6, we replace 1 second with twin duration. when we are healing. And we also add the SAT health threshold. Now, if we're taking damage, we don't need the is valid anymore. Now, for the bar 5 time, we replaced 1 second with 2 in duration. Also multiply bar 6 time by duration. And the rest remains the same. Okay, update hearts. We are changing full hearts.size.x to our heart step times the health, which is much simpler than what we had before. And the same thing for the shields. We just change health to a shield. Now on the flash count, we don't have to say mod anymore. By the way, max flash is now 8. We used to have it at 7. So we don't need the mod. And that's because when we take damage, we set flash count to 0. Over here. So there's no point to use the mod operator. On timer 2, the only change is the SAT health. Okay, so that's it for the health bars. Thank you for watching.